Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Feud, Bette and Joan, Season 1, Episode 8, and this is the finale. And the name of this episode is You Mean All This Time We Could Have Been Friends. Man, I so enjoyed the series, and I'm so sad that it ended, that it's come to an end, but it was a really good series, and the acting and the writing on this show was amazing, and I enjoyed every single episode. Well, the last episode, it starts off at the 1978 documentary, and we come to find out that this actual documentary is actually being filmed backstage at the 1978 Academy Awards. Well, the first person they talk to is Paula. You remember Paula? She was Bob Aldridge's assistant, and she, had desires of becoming a director herself. Well, she actually does pursue directing, but instead of doing, motion pictures, she decided to do documentary films, and she's very successful. And while she's having this conversation, she talks about the last time she saw Joan, that Joan, I think, was at an airport, and she had like her ankles broken, and you can just, she pretty much could tell that it was like the beginning of the end for Joan Crawford, and that Joan had cried when she saw her because she said that it was so great to see an old friend. And she, in a way, just knowing from seeing Joan that day, she just knew that Joan was on her way out. Like, she was pretty much at the end of her rope. Next, we actually see that Joan has moved to New York City, and she has adapted to her new lifestyle in New York. She's doing for herself. She's cleaning and cooking and all of that. And we also see that Mamacita comes back, but she only comes back part-time. So even though Mamacita had left for a few years, she finally came back to her, but only decided to work with her part-time. So we see that Joan is now living life on her own in the big city. She's no longer living in Hollywood. She's now living in New York. And we see that while she's brushing her teeth, she's spitting out blood. And this happens every time she brushes her teeth. So finally she goes to see the dentist. And she reveals to the dentist that I think she had got this procedure done when she was 23 years old. That her agent had told her, in order for her cheeks to become more tighter and to become more visible on camera, they did this procedure where they removed 6 of her molar teeth out of her mouth. Now that had to be some painful shit to go through. But she did all this in the name of beauty and in the name of her career. But now it's infected and she's spitting up blood, and the doctor and the dentist is trying to suggest to her that she should get dentures. She doesn't want dentures. And the dentist lets her know that, look, right now, at this point in your life, instead of you worrying about your looks, you need to be worrying about your health. And she said without a blink that I'll stop worrying about my looks once they put me in formaldehyde. So I was like, damn. She still stuck in the beauty and and the physicality all the way into the end. So even though right now her life is pretty much in danger, and she's having all these health problems, she's still in that mode that she's a star, and that no matter what happens, she has to be on. And it's actually really sad because she had did all this to herself to become famous, and now it's coming back to haunt her. Next, we actually see that she has a meeting with her agent, and it's this movie called The Missing Link. It's being filmed in London. There are no special accommodations, and there's no money that she can't bring Mamacita with her because there's not enough money in the budget for that. So, and that also, there's not a lot, and also she's not going to be making a lot of money off of this picture either. So, but she agrees to do it because she wants to work and she, she wants the opportunity. But when she gets there, she really sees how horrendous and trifling the situation is. She sees she has no dressing room. No one came to pick her up from the airport. She had to change in front of people, and the thing is, they offered her one of the vans as a place where she can go and change, so she wouldn't have to change in front of people. They let her change in this van. And the shooting on this movie was crazy because, one, they changed the name of the movie from The Missing Link to Trog. So it became about this, half man, half animal character, and she plays like this scientist, and it's to the point where she literally gets lost into, she literally gets lost into the script, where it's like she really can't give her best performance because it's all about Trog. It's all about that creature, and again, she's being used as a gimmick. Just like what happened when she was in that movie with William Castle. So it's like, just again, she's kind of in the same situation. Is that this situation is worse, and it gets to the point that she starts having hallucinations. And one of the people that noticed it was the security guard on set, and he lets the director know that every day after everyone leaves, she literally is going through the entire set, talking to herself, talking out of her head, and she, we even see her putting on the head of Trog and walking around doing her spiel, and the director's like, just don't do anything. But we later on find out that these hallucinations are brought on the fact that Joan has inherited an illness that I'm going to mention in a minute. But then also, another thing that our agent also offered her was this book deal where they can talk about, Joan Crawford's lifestyle, where she can give, beauty tips, makeup tips, home decorating tips. And we actually see that she's at a book signing autographed books, autographing her book. And everyone else is asking questions about either Trog or whatever happened to Baby Jane. And she really starts to become rude to some of her fans, cause it's like she really feels that she's not being taken seriously and that people are not truly respecting her for the artist that she is. It's just that now people only see her for what she's done recently, but not actually respecting the full body of work that she's brought to the table. So it makes Joan feel some kind of way, and she starts snapping at some of the people. But then when one guy actually said that, whatever happened to Baby Jane was one of his favorite movies, at first she was rebuffing like, so why is it your favorite movie? Please, I would like to know. And he lets her know that, look, I would have to say that it was probably one of the best performances you did, because it drew me in. Even though, Betty had the real media role, it's a certain subtleness that came through with the role of Blanche, and you really brought that to life. So he actually was a true fan of Jones, and we actually see that actually kind of humbled her a bit. But then also we also see later on that she actually sees this article of her in the paper, and she really does not like the way she looks. She's not liking the way she's being portrayed. So it gets to the point where she just tells her agent Stan that she doesn't want to be offered any more roles or any more parts for anything, and that she's completely done. So she literally shuts her career off, and she goes into exile. Next, we actually, the next person that we actually see is Victor Bona. And we now know that, Victor Bona has become very close friends with Betty Davis, but then he's also friends with Joan Crawford as well. And he pretty much talks about that, yeah, Joan really had it bad. Well, after that movie Trog, she kind of like went into exile. But she said that Betty's career fared no better because Betty Davis had, filmed 8 different pilots and they all went nowhere. And then there also is a scene where Betty and Victor are talking, and she's talking about Katharine Hepburn, and she's saying that Katharine Hepburn is still getting roles, Katharine Hepburn is still getting respected by the industry. And she said, did you know that Life magazine wanted to do an article, wanted to do a cover with me and her on the cover? She said, for one, she blew them off completely, but when she finally did answer, she said she didn't want to be posed, she didn't want to take a picture with me. So she said, now if Katharine Hepburn was in my face, I would let her know that, I'm proud to be who I am and that I have the love of my children. Really just mocking Katharine Hepburn because she never had any children. So she's like, yes, I will let her know that, yeah, you may think you have it all, but I have something that you don't have. I have my children, and my children love me. But then we actually, after that, we see that she has a scene with BD, and now Betty is living in Hollywood. It's like her and Joan switched places, because Betty's from, the East Coast. And we see that Joan Crawford is now living in New York, and Betty is now living in Hollywood, living the Hollywood life. And also to mention too, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte didn't do as well as Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and it was really panned by the critics, which really pissed Betty off because they panned the movie really bad. Even though it was a good film, and her and Olivia de Havilland, they delivered great performances in it, and even Agnes Moorehead, she was nominated for an Oscar for playing the role of the housekeeper Velma. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. So it was a successful film, but it wasn't as successful as Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and the critics panned it. But I just wanted to mention that. But then also we also have a scene with Betty and BD, and BD is pretty much mad at Betty because she had spanked BD's youngest son, and she was saying that, the only way you're now going to see your grandchildren is with adult supervision, and, you need to quit smoking, and you're an alcoholic. And she's like, what do you mean I'm an alcoholic? She's like, yeah. Who the hell has a margarita, has a margarita in their hand at 11 a.m.? And BD just pretty much like paid her debts and was like, look, I'm not here to eat with you. I'm just here to say what I had to say, that, my children are with their father, and at the end of the day, you will not see your grandchildren unless there's an adult present, because I don't trust my children with you. And she walked away. And then we also see that Betty goes on this, Dean Martin roast where they are bashing her and Joan, and Betty is just sitting there taking it. So we're really seeing, like, Betty's career is struggling, and she's struggling pretty bad. Next, another thing that Victor Bono mentions is the movie that Betty Davis did with Faye Dunaway. The thing was called The Disappearance of Amy. And in this situation, Betty found someone who was 10 times worse than Joan. Like, she hated Faye Dunaway. Like, Faye Dunaway to her was the ultimate, savage bitch. Because they had a scene where, Betty was ready on time, but Faye was literally taking forever to get on the set, and production is being held up because she's not on time. And she said that in times like this, I actually miss, and she's talking to Victor Bono, she's like, in times like this, I miss Joan, because at least Joan was a professional. Yeah, I couldn't stand the bitch, but at least the bitch came to work. This little fucking bitch doesn't want to do shit. And she's very nasty, she's very disrespectful. And, and another thing that bothers me about Joan is that Joan likes Faye Dunaway. She says that Faye Dunaway is beautiful and that she can see her playing her in the movie. How about that? Because actually Faye Dunaway ends up getting her chance to do that. And Victor Bono actually gives Betty the news that Joan Crawford has cancer and that maybe you should reach out to her. She would love to hear from you. And she goes to reach out to her, but, you know, when Joan answers the phone, she hangs up. Afterwards, we actually see that Sydney, one of Joan Crawford's twins, because she has Cindy and Kathy, Cindy comes there with her 2 children, a boy and a girl, to visit Joan. And we actually see that Joan loves her grandkids and her grandchildren love her. They have a conversation about Christina's book, Mommy Dearest, and that, you know, she knows that there's a lot of bad stuff in this book that is being said about her. But then she said that, you know, when it came to Christina, I was at the height of my career. I barely had time for her, and my main focus was my career. It wasn't her, and it wasn't her, you know, well-being or her wishes. So she literally, you know, was ignored by me throughout her upbringing, which is why a lot of that resentment is there. But come on, Joan. Also, that resentment was there because you used to beat the shit out of her and her brother. So we actually realized that, yeah, at that time, you know, Joan was not really focused on really being a mother. She was focused on being an A-list actress, you know, because that's where most of her attention went. But Cindy said that, you know, she hasn't heard from Christina, and, you know, Joan actually breaks down and asks, like, you know, do your children see me as their grandmother? You know, because I know, you know that you and your sister were adopted. Do they see me as their real grandmother? And she says, yes, of course. You know, they know everything, but they know that you took us in when no one else did, and you actually loved us as your own children. So, yes, they are your grandchildren, you are their grandmother, and they love you very much. And she was actually really touched by that because she actually still had that remnant of family that did love and care for her. Later on, we see that Joan gets out of bed to actually see in her living room Jack Warner, Hedda Hopper, and Betty Davis, and they're talking about old times. They're talking about how they made their mark and how they have left an impact on Hollywood that'll never be replaced. They pretty much make amends to certain things that went down, especially, you know, between Joan and Betty, you know, and how the two of them, you know, Hedda and Jack, were kind of like the co-conspirators of putting them against each other. And, you know, she also opens up about, also in this situation, Joan opens up about that, you know, all her life she has been acting as Joan Crawford, but then by herself she has no idea of who she is. And that's why she was so lonely, why she was so bitter, and why she did the things she did, because all she knew was to be Joan Crawford, which was an act, which was a character that she created. I mean, so it shows you right there, I mean, Joan Crawford was a phenomenal actress, because even her role as a movie star was exactly that. It was a role. And we see them going back and forth until we actually see that Mamacita calls her, and we actually see that she was really having a hallucination, and that Jack and Hedda and Betty really weren't there, but she's talking to them as if they were. I mean, she's like, Mamacita, bring the champagne, and she's like, you know, Miss Joan, there's nobody here. And she's like, come on, let's go to bed. And it wasn't until she turned on the light that Joan looked at her hair and looked at her nightgown and realized, oh, wow. And what ended up happening is that, you know, Joan ended up dying that next week. And, you know, Mamacita helps her to bed. But, you know, Joan actually, you know, died that next week. And we actually see that Mamacita actually talks to, you know, the people that's doing the dockery in 1978. and she talks about Joan's death, and she said it really made her sad because everybody showed up at her funeral, but when she needed them the most, nobody was there. And then we get the famous, infamous remark from Bette Davis when she was asked about Joan Crawford's death. And she politely says, "My mother always taught me to speak good of the dead. Joan Crawford's dead. Good." I was like, damn, Bette just carried that damn feud to the end. Even in death, she fucking threw shade at her ass, which was crazy. But later on, we see that they're at the 1978 Academy Awards. They actually do a memoriam where they actually they salute people like they salute Joan Crawford, and they also salute Bing Crosby and a few others. And we see that Joan Blondell's there, Olivia de Havilland, Victor Bono, all of them there, and they toast to Joan. And then we actually see the guy who's actually doing the documentary approach Bette. And then Bette said, like, "Look, what you want me to give you a few one-liners about Joan Crawford? How we had this bitch feud, and you want me to get on camera and continue to feel that?" She said, I told you in writing, I told you over the phone, and now I'm telling you in person, I'm not going to do it." She was a professional, and I'm not going down that road with you. She was a professional actress. I respected her craft, and I'm not getting involved in the bullshit. So then, one of the people asked, like, I wonder how it was like working with them on that first day of shooting on whatever happened to Baby Jane. And we see that the two of them are actually pleasant with each other. And before it closes off, Joan says, "I hope from this experience that I've gained a new friend." And Bette said, "Me too." And then they go into their separate trailers, and that's how the episode ended. And then we also, they pretty much, gave us further information about all of the characters. And like when they passed, like Bob Aldrich, he passed in '83. Jack Warner died in '78. Victor Bono died in 1982 at the age of 43. Olivia de Havilland is still alive. She just turned 100 years old on January 1st, 2016. So Olivia de Havilland is still with us. Hedda Hopper had passed away in '66. Mommy Dearest came out in 1978. And it was made into a movie called Mommy Dearest, starring Faye Dunaway. So, as I said, I was going to get back to that. And it's an infamous movie, but it pretty much was camp. But it's a legendary movie. I mean, but I'm glad that Jessica Lange gave more of a different glimpse into who Joan Crawford was, because now I can actually say I understand her more as a human being now. Whereas with Mommy Dearest, you kind of see her with that caricature and no wire hangers, and it was good that we actually got to see a human side of Joan through this series of Feud, Bette and Joan. And then we also see that Bette Davis, had passed away in 1989. She also had cancer, just like Joan. So yeah, I was actually, it almost made me emotional watching this episode because I really hate to see it go, but then again, it was great because we actually really got a glimpse into what really went down between these two women and why their feud was so big, and why even as of today, we're still talking about their feud, even though these women have been gone for many years. So that's my review, guys. If I missed anything, put it down in the comments. But subscribe to my channel. Click that bell so you can get notifications every time I drop a video. Like this video, comment on this video, share this video. And And definitely, it's been a pleasure reviewing this show. And I will be back when they actually do Feud next. And I think the next feud they're gonna do is Princess Diana and Prince Charles. And I look forward to that. So I definitely will be reviewing that. So until then, everybody, take care.